Thanks for tuning in to Women Who Open Doors, a podcast dedicated to lifting the voices of incredible women in our communities who not only excel in their careers, but inspire us through their actions for others. Hi, I'm Julie Collins, owner and coach of Not Magic, and it's my honor to help share the stories of these remarkable women. So without further ado, welcome to Women Who Open Doors. I am super excited today to talk to one of our new guests, Amanda Nowak. Amanda Nowak is a natural when it comes to supporting others. She'll be the first to raise her hand to help others, give selflessly, and cheer for whoever wins the race. These characteristics would become her greatest asset and a great opportunity for personal and professional growth. Amanda is a serial entrepreneur, and we'll talk more about that today, who scaled a 7-figure commercial decor business, The Simple Home, in 11 years. Amanda is now founder of Element 8, which empowers overwhelmed and burnt out women through coaching and workshops, guiding them to realign their lives with a touch of the woo. So welcome, Amanda. And let me just first ask, what is the touch of the woo? That's a fun thing. Tell us about what that is.
Yeah, so I have always been interested in things like tarot and astrology and things like that because I think there's an art and a science to it. So when I was going through my burnout journey, I found that a lot of the things that helped me were the things like tarot. I think is a great example because you're pulling cards and it's telling you things, but really it's kind of like coaching where it's pulling the answers out of you, because you and I could get the same card and we would have two different ideas of what that meant for us. So it's just kind of fun. And like astrology too, like getting your birth chart read, or where the planets are at any point. It sounds crazy, but I always think like the moon moves tides. So why do we not think that where the planets and stars are at any point won't affect us when we are made of water?
Interesting. Yeah. Well, this will be so you introduced that into your coaching business that I described. Is that?
I do. It's going to be a little bit more in the workshops because part of what we're doing, like the workshops and the retreats, is very much giving women time to kind of relax and unwind. And fun fact, I'm actually Reiki trained.
Are you really?
So it's something I wanted to start doing in my coaching sessions, just kind of like manage energy, because I know that's one of the things when we're burnt out. It's like just big balls of energy that needs to be kind of taken down a little bit and balanced. I would love to do that as part of my retreats. And again, I find the women around me are also interested in the woo, and it cracks me up because it's like these very practical women, and they're like, "You get your tarot cards read? So what is that like? Are they going to tell you that you're going to die?" I'm like, no, it's just there's just little nuggets in there that sometimes you're like, maybe that is something I need to think about, or it's fun.
I am that practical woman because as you were describing that, I'm like, I think I have to understand that a little bit more because I'm super practical like that. So but it's really intriguing. So yeah, we'll have to do an offline discussion about that a little bit more. That's cool. That's awesome.
Oh, sure.
Well, tell us a little bit more about you being the serial entrepreneur. Very impressive, right? To have a business, 11 years, 7 figures, and then you're into your next new adventure. But just talk to us a little bit about this serial entrepreneur and spirit that you have. Where does it come from, and how did that get you started anyway?
Sure. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My grandparents bought a supper club on Lake Delavan 60 some years ago. So they had that all of my life. My uncles took it over in the 90s when they passed away, and they just sold it 2 years ago when they retired. My mom's an artist, so she used to have a gift shop at one point, and she sells her artwork. So it's always been this thing around me. But what's funny is I never knew that I would be an entrepreneur. I went to school for
Yeah.
interior design, and I thought, oh, I'll get a corporate design job, and that's what I'll do for 40 years. Like, fine. But I did find myself when I had my corporate job thinking, there are things that I could do that would help people, or I could solve this problem that exists. So when I worked for Brookdale Senior Living was my corporate job. They were the biggest senior living company in the country. They had 500 buildings at that point. Like we struggled with sourcing accessories. We would have to shop for them all the time, and it was so time consuming. The logistics of it were awful. And it was my favorite part. And so I was on a plane one day and I thought, I could do this. Like I could package these things up and sell them to these senior living communities. And so it's funny, growing up in the restaurant industry, I thought I will never marry a man who owns a restaurant. So I found a man who was in finance. And then a few years into our relationship, he was like, hey, I think I want to start a catering business. And so, of course, I was like, that sounds great. I will encourage this. So, I mean, even that was only 2 years into our relationship, that entrepreneur seed was planted. And then 2012 was the point where I got burnt out in my corporate job. I was traveling constantly because our buildings were all over the country. Yeah. And so I had this thought of the accessories. My husband's business was starting to take off, and we were taking all of our PTO to prep for like weddings because it was just us at this point. He was still working his job. Yeah. So then we left our jobs a year apart. Like I left mine in 2012. He left his in 2013. And luckily my old job was, I said, I know you struggle with these accessories. Could I source them for you? And they said, yeah. So that was my first business and my first client. And so, cool. Then I lived in this house with two of us entrepreneurs, which, is amazing that we can support each other. But also sometimes sometimes I just wish one of us had a job with a regular salary and health insurance,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there had to have been, now listening to you in terms of your husband, right? I knew that. But your family, there had to be this spirit around you that was about taking risks. Like what did you observe in your family that, connect the dots for me? Because there had to be something going on with your family. Then you get attracted to somebody else that kind of wants to start. There's something in the aura around you. What is it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was good that I knew how hard it was growing up in it, because I think, they were in a resort community. So summers were super busy. We could never go anywhere in the summer because that was when you made all your money. But I knew the whole story of somebody didn't show up for work. So guess what? Somebody has to leave, my cousin's birthday party to go work because, we need another server, or somebody has to work in the kitchen. So there was always this knowing of it's hard, but it's fun, and there's rewards. And I loved the idea of you can make your business into whatever you want. Cause I'm actually the first person in my whole family to work in corporate, because everyone, except my mom was a teacher, but she also worked at the restaurant, but everyone else in my family, their life kind of centered around the restaurant. Okay. So my aunt came to work for me at 62, and I was only the second W-2 she'd ever gotten.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it was funny going into corporate life and being oh yeah, I don't like this. It's it's just, it's so different. So
yeah. There's something to be said too. I'm curious, you said 2012, 2013. So your husband leaves a job. A year later, you're leaving your job. There's a lot of risk to that. And even a year apart, I would be scared. I was scared, and my husband had a stable job at the time.
Yeah. Well, and actually it was flipped. I left first because,
you left first. Okay.
Because we knew the way we figured it, I could do some of the food shopping and things like that while he was still working his job, because his was more flexible. I had to travel constantly. He didn't. So he would be able to step away and take phone calls and things like that, where I didn't have that flexibility. So in doing that, yeah, so then like a year later is when he got a space. And that was a whole
Mhm.
other can of worms because luckily with my business, I was able to do everything out of our house and kept relatively low overhead because I was
Yeah.
essentially buying the product, shipping it out, the money would come in. But with him, we had to outfit a space. So,
Mhm.
in early 2013, we found the space in Wauwatosa and it was like, well, it needs a hood. You have to buy all this equipment. And
Mhm.
I think it's funny, like we look back at 2008, 2009 when the economy tanked. And I forget that it was a long time before like it recovered and people were giving you
Yeah.
money again
Mhm.
because, we essentially needed a loan. Like
Yeah.
we didn't have just like 50 grand to pull out of nowhere and be like, oh, sure, here you go for the hood and the equipment and all the things. Um, so, that year, like I love to tell the story of of Rage, my Rage email I sent to my husband because when we were looking at that space, we knew we had to, have a certain amount of money to open it. And we couldn't get a loan because we didn't have anything that could be taken away from us. And so he went to one of the local revolving loan committees that said, oh, we give money to people who can't get traditional loans. And so he went to it and they basically for an hour said, you don't have enough experience. It'll ruin your
Mhm.
relationship with your wife. But also, if your wife's family wants to put their restaurant up as collateral, we'll consider giving you this money. And so he left just being like, I don't know how we're going to do this. I can't. And so I was out running errands and I went and worked out and I got all riled up. And I came home and I wrote him an email to his, he was working his finance job. So I'm sitting there just like typing. I'm like, you know what? Like, screw them. Like, we can cash in our 401ks. We can max out our credit cards. Like, we can make this work. We're just going to do it. We don't have kids at this point. Like, we've got nothing to
Yeah.
lose. Like, what's the worst
Yeah.
could happen? We go back and we work serving jobs or bartend or things like that. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like go big or go home.
Right. Yeah.
And so we did. And that year was terrifying. Like,
Mm.
you put all of your money into this thing and you're just sitting there like, okay, because then he left his job because now we have a space and somebody has to be there all the time. I still have to run my business.
Right.
So we had this conversation. We're like, do you remember when it was like, can you pay for groceries? Can you get gas in my car? And he said too, he goes, I remember sitting there first year being like, I hope this phone rings and like we get some jobs to pay the bills. Like it was super stressful. I think I
Yeah.
kind of blocked it out.
I go to therapy. I only talk about it at therapy. Yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
like I'm so glad that we had each other and we, I look at some of my friends who have businesses and their partners are not supportive at all. They treat it like it's a hobby and it
Mhm.
doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And, very much we were there for each other. Like, okay, what do you need? You need me to come help you with this? I'll come help
Yeah.
you with this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a very interesting time in our life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably, I mean, I'm doing it too. I've done it and I agree with you. It really is about the support of your family and a great partner. But also just like working through the fear of, the debt and how do you make ends meet and how do you, is this going to work? I used to say that in my head, like, is this going to work? Is this going to work? So yeah, but it has, like you said, it has a very, your ability to do what you want and to create something is, it's really cool. So tell us about some of after you got through, you got to the point where your business, Simple Home, at that point was really starting to pick up and to grow. What was outside of the debt management and the relationship with your husband? What's the biggest lesson that you learned out of that, out of the Simple Home experience for you?
Yeah. I think it was definitely, I wish I would have known what I wanted out of my business
Mm,
versus running and growing a business that was trying to hit this arbitrary goalpost that I thought I was
mm.
supposed to hit.
Yeah, love that.
So, I mean, because I think at the time when I started, 2012, the world was much different, and
Yes.
hustle culture was such a thing of like, go, work 70, 80 hours in your business, make all this
Yeah.
money, blah, blah, blah. And so I did that, and I scaled and I grew it, and then I got it to that point, and I'm like, why? Like
Mm.
I was so miserable. Like it
Yeah.
was, I am not someone who likes managing people. And
Hmm.
at the peak, I was managing 8 people.
Yeah.
Like I compare it to like, I don't like cooking because I don't like paying attention to several things at once. And like 8 people, oh my God. Like
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
is good for me. Two is good. Anything beyond that, it's hard. Because then in
Yeah.
addition to that, you're wearing all the hats of being the entrepreneur too. So
Yeah.
I, at some point, I looked at what my values were, and they were like
Hmm.
peace and freedom. I thought,
Hmm. Yeah.
why? What am I doing? Like
Yeah.
I had this business with all these people and these big clients, and everything was like so time sensitive. Like I just had my moment of like, oh, this isn't how I should have built this business. I could
Hmm.
have built it much
Hmm.
differently to stay like in alignment with what I actually wanted.
Yeah. What was the milestone for you? What was the actual aha moment? Did you have an aha moment where it really stopped you in your tracks?
Yeah, my meltdown I had on vacation.
Yeah. Okay.
It was super
That's
fun.
always a good time to have a meltdown is on vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2021, my husband and I took our first vacation since COVID. Uh, and so we went on this trip down south to hit like some of the states I hadn't hit before. And we're sitting at dinner the first night of this 10-day vacation that is supposed to relax me, right? And I just share with him that I hate my business. I am so overwhelmed. I have this
Yeah.
vibrating in my chest that won't go away. I don't really want to go to work in the morning. I dread it. Um, and at that point too, I'd already been thinking in 2020 that like maybe I wanted to think about exiting at some point in the
Mhm.
future because I knew,
Mhm.
you've got to think about it several years ahead of time, and somebody told me do it before you hate your business. So
Yeah.
I was in the process of getting my business to a place where, my profit was looking good, and I was slowly trying to pull myself out of processes. But like doing all of that at the same time and growing it was just too much. So that was the
Yeah.
point where I'm like, I am not the person to grow this to the point to sell it for money that we can retire off of. Like I can't. And my poor husband sat there like, okay.
Not what I thought would happen on vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Welcome to vacation. Would
Yeah.
you like another margarita? Um, and so, he and I at that point too, I was like, I just want to shut it down.
Mm.
I don't want to do it anymore. And so he was like, okay, I will support whatever you want to do. However, maybe let's take this vacation and like think about it. And then when we come back, like maybe let's see like what else we can do.
Yeah.
And so I'm forever grateful for my two coaches at the time. So Kylie Peters from Rain 9 and Paul Scholes from Breakthrough Solutions. Um,
Awesome.
Kylie was actually helping me with the exit planning. So I went to her, I was like, hi, remember we're going to exit here. We're exiting like here. So how can we make that happen? And
Yeah.
Paul helps me with a lot of like the operational things. I had to make some hard decisions because, we were running too hard and fast, and was even looking at like what's actually worth it, like what's profitable and what are things that are just making us spin our wheels that are doing
Mhm.
nothing.
Yeah.
So that was the turning point, Julie.
Vacation, lots of margaritas. And yeah, you said something earlier though too that's intriguing for me. And I find this not just when you're exiting a business, but also when you're getting into it or you're getting out of corporate, where it's like, what's in alignment with who I am and the way I want to be and what I want for my future. Like, I think that's key. And so often, I talk to women all the time that are like, I couldn't do what you do. And I'm like, yeah, you could, but it's your choice, right? There's a choice. There's usually a defining moment or a milestone that says, like, I'm out of alignment, out of alignment of purpose. I'm out of alignment of what I want to be when I grow up. And, it's our responsibility individually to kind of go, but society so often doesn't let you do that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things, it's like one of the first sessions I have with my coaching clients is we talk about their values and like
Yeah.
what they actually want. And
Yeah.
I myself had the same thing where you sit there like, what do I want? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
supposed to want this, but is that what I want?
Yeah. Yeah. You had also mentioned though, so before you pivoted out of Simple Home and you did your exit planning, you also did a really important step that I also tell people a lot about is taking that time. So you took time off before you started. So talk to
Mhm.
me about that process of what that was like and like going through the decision to say, yeah, it's time. I need this space.
Yeah. So I had started coaching at some like early 2023 and was going through like all my training as I was still running the Simple Home. So I knew
Yeah.
that at one point I would shut down the Simple Home and then I would go into coaching. But I knew that I needed some space in between the two
Yeah.
because at every other point in my life, I went right from one thing to the next. You know,
Mhm.
it's like you go from college into a job. Like even when I switched jobs, I never took more than like a day off. There was never a couple weeks in there. So I was fortunate enough that I had some money left over from, you know, ending my business where I could take 2 months off and just not have any agenda. I had this goal of, I thought back to college when you finish a semester and you have like your winter break, where for that month you would have nothing hanging over your head. That's
Yeah.
what I wanted for those 2 months. And like nothing
Mhm.
is hanging over my head. I'm not going to give myself any checklists or things to do. I am just going to be. And fighting guilt was a big thing.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
like there were days where I'm like, I would like to lay on the couch and watch a movie, but I should go clean out my bedroom closet. And so it was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
bit of like, you're like this standing there, like talking to yourself, like, nope, this is fine. I can do this. I don't have to do the other thing. I don't have to be productive. I can just relax because I don't think, because I planned on taking 2 months. I took almost three off
Mm.
because I realized I needed even more rest
Mhm.
and not
Mhm.
having to jump back into the now I have to do all these things and
Mhm.
phone calls and all of that. Um, it was a struggle the first week when I came home because I had a 5,000 square foot warehouse that I pared down to 12 bins of things that I brought home. So we'd put them in the guest bedroom, and my husband said, you know, you can leave those for a couple weeks, like take your
Yeah.
time going through them. I was through them in the first day, and I had organized half of our house. So that was my like busy work at the beginning of like, okay, I need to get my house organized so that I can relax for the rest of these 2 months. And then yeah, I did. I tried to spend some time with my family. Like I said, I caught up on some TV. I joked that by the end of the 2.5 months, I had reached the end of the internet and the end of streaming services. And so I had no desire to watch anything anymore. But
Yeah. Yeah, I went through the same thing. I actually took 4 off, and the interesting piece, I had the same transition of the closet example is I laugh because it's the same one that I used with people because Mark would come home and I'd be like, "I cleaned the closet," and he's like, "Why?" Right? Like, "You're supposed to be resting right now." Like, I
yeah,
don't understand. Like, you don't have to tell me that you cleaned the closet, right? But I think that interesting transition, I wonder as I talk to people that are older in their careers, there is a transition going into retirement too, that I hear people talk about the same kind of theme. Like you go from your working and your speed is fast and the impact and all of that. And then you're like, structure, I don't have structure anymore. And not having structure is kind of an interesting piece, you know? So we force structure, we force cleaning a closet.
yeah,
So yeah, I said it's just a prep for my retirement at some point.
yeah.
So
Well, and I even had kind of a realization in those 2 months of like, I don't know that I want to just straight up retire. I think I
yeah,
still want to have something that I'm doing in retirement. So maybe it's, you know, I'm consulting a few hours a day or something like that. But I can't imagine a world where I'm just like, I'm retired now and I have nothing planned. That
yeah,
would be a nightmare because I
yeah,
got real bored.
yeah. Yeah. So you've started your coaching business. One of the reasons too why we wanted to have you on the podcast, because obviously, you know, transitioning business is a big deal, and many people don't even do one business, let alone transition into two. So, talk to us a little bit about what you're doing with your coaching business, and why you picked kind of the niche that you're picking right now for women.
I picked it because as I would, well, first of all, I had gone through the burnout and the overwhelm and how awful it was. And I found that as I shared my story, there were so many women around me experiencing the same things. So, what I want to do with my coaching is just really help women realize that A, they're not alone, and B, that there are ways through it. I tell everyone that it is a marathon, it is not a sprint, because we have lots of habits and deep seated societal things going on that make it hard to get out of this go, go, go on the road to burnout. So it's a lot of small incremental changes and habit changes, things like that, that get you to a place where you're not so overwhelmed, your life is more in balance, and you're able to focus on the things that you're really excited about and have, my goal too is just to give women more fulfilling lives.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. Is there a type of client, I know woman, right? Someone dealing with burnout. Do you specialize in any kind of specific industries, size of businesses, anything like that?
Entrepreneurs are obviously my wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would say even, I work with women who are, driven perfectionists that have corporate jobs. And I would say a size of business, I don't know if that really exists. I don't, I would say new business owners are probably not my wheelhouse because they're still excited about their business. They haven't reached even, the point of burnout yet. But a lot of my clients are in the 7 to 11 year range of owning their businesses. And, people in careers, they've been doing it 15-ish years, somewhere in there. But it's the point where they just keep going, going, going. They know they can't continue. And how do they change things?
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think are some of the misconceptions of especially women entrepreneurs and in that category, that 7 to 8, what are some of the misconceptions that you see either they deal with or the outside world has?
I think when you reach that point in your business, that's when you're really like, do I like this or not? Like you've kind of hit a lot of the milestones of maybe you've brought on a team, you've scaled. I think people think you have it all together at that point. Like, oh, smooth sailing now. You've kind of hit all the bumps, but that is really where the rubber meets the road. And you say, like, is this the thing I want to do? Or is this the point where I pick something else? I had a lot of friends that had their businesses in that 7 to 11 year range that ended their businesses in the last 2 years. COVID could have had something to do with it because I think that made a lot of us refocus on what was important and what we wanted. But there's something about that time range that it just brings us back to like that introspection of, is this it? Is it not? Even my clients, I have some that are at that point and they almost have that same question, like, is this it? Do I do something else? And some have gotten reinvigorated in their businesses and found, the parts they do like and the joy in it. And now they're excited. And others are like, I think this is just the season of my life and I think it's done.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, really good observations. So what's the biggest piece of advice you give to people?
Taking time and space for yourself. It seems to be the thing that everybody's like, well, I don't have time for myself. I don't. And it's it's like those small incremental changes over time. I tell them, if you don't think you have time, I want you to go in the bathroom for 5 minutes, shut and lock the door, and just sit on the toilet seat and shut your eyes and take deep breaths for 5 minutes.
Nice.
Because doing that, you're proving that you can take time for yourself, even though it's small. And then over time, you expand that time into hours and taking a whole day off. Oh my God. That sounds so insurmountable.
Crazy. Yeah.
But because that was something that I did. I had to force that time off. Like when I still had the simple home, when I came back from that meltdown vacation, I decided that summer we were going to go to a 4-day work week because I needed one day to do work by myself with nobody bothering me. And I actually wanted to then maybe have part of a weekend day. Yeah. And by me doing that, I kind of helped streamline everything so that I did have that time for myself to work alone, which I know not the best, but then it got to the point where then I could have focused time by myself to do the thing I wanted to and just like breathe.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you just even described the small step, even that it was in the bathroom. That's delightful. But like just the small step of taking it, because I think too often, entrepreneurs, business owners, and I'm in that category with you. So you just got to take a moment. And I think more people are understanding, don't you, now than ever before? Maybe COVID helped that or whatever. I hate talking about COVID again, but I think that helped where people understand it more than maybe 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, and something I've talked about a lot is like having like space and silence.
Yeah.
Because it's like when like everything slowed down, right? We had nowhere to go, nothing to do. And like we had to sit with ourselves and go, okay, so like what do I like to do when there's nothing else to do?
Right.
So many people came up with hobbies like, baking sourdough bread, and like people have built businesses out of the things that they found during that time.
Yeah.
And so I use this example of when if you turn a radio on in your house during the day, like you can have it on low and it's kind of in the background and, dogs are barking and people are talking and moving around. But if you leave that radio on in the middle of the night and you wake up to go to the bathroom, that sound is deafening. And so I think like that is like our inner voice sometimes, where if we're doing all these things and it's so loud, we can't hear what it's trying to tell us. But if we get quiet and give ourselves some space, like the things start, like the first day of vacation was like, oh, I hate it here.
But you gave yourself space at that time, even though it was a change, you gave yourself space to make the change. And your husband was super supportive too. He said, wait, let's think about that a little bit. But that's great. That's great. Well, our time has gone super fast. I knew it would. So I want to make sure that we get to tell people where they can hear about Element 8 and how they can get in touch with you if they are a business owner or entrepreneur or leader that is facing the challenges of burnout and stress. How can they get in contact with you?
Sure. You can go to our website, element-8.com. You can email me at amanda@element8.com. And I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn pretty regularly. In the near future, I'm going to be holding some day-long retreats, so you can watch for those. They'll be kind of smaller group settings, and again, just a place where one can kind of relax and unwind and connect with other like-minded women.
Awesome. Well, you have been a delight. Thank you so much for spreading the word about women leaders and helping them through the journey that all of us have. So thank you so much for all the time that you spent with us today on Women Who Open Doors.
Yeah, thank you, Julie.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we have. Are there inspirational women leaders in your life? Recommend them for this podcast by emailing me at jcollins@knot-magic.com and telling me why they're the perfect person to be featured. And please leave us a review on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts to help us share these amazing women with others.